In the ever-changing world of healthcare, are you looking to get advice and learn to prepare for healthcare challenges that you may face? Come join a conversation about all things healthcare and wellness with your hosts, Gavin Wiswell and Dr. Monsi Shaw.
Welcome to the Healthcare Corner, everyone. And today's episode is going to be unique in the fact that we're going to address, I think, a different population than we usually do. So for those that listen to the show each week and subscribe to our show, wherever you get your podcasts, typically we're talking about sleep, exercise, diet, wellness, usually for those living with chronic conditions and that maybe are a little bit older. And today we're going to be focusing and lasering in on really the exercise component with our special guest and really kind of drilling down into maybe even at a juvenile level, just the importance of sports and function and training and how that can lead to a happier and maybe healthier life. So, Monsi, I'm excited for the show today. How are you doing?
I am absolutely psyched about this show because this is unique and different. So thank you, Brian, for doing this, and let's dive into it.
Wonderful. So today's topics are going to be movement literacy for our youth. And on the Healthcare Corner, we want to help everybody be better consumers of healthcare information. So today we're going to focus on that literacy for youth. Also, we're going to talk about cash pay services that stand to advance physical therapy in general. So on the show, we talk about so many wonderful solutions that are out there, but it really comes down to who pays for it. And so when we're talking about Medicare and that for older folks, that's great. But I think today is almost a spend-save model. So spending money up front, and this is also for wellness and everything that you do, Monsi, as well, right? To be able to understand your healthcare dollars and spend so that it's important to front load those dollars so that you're not paying for it later down the line. And then finally, the topic that I really can't wait to address with Brian is that single sport decision being forced upon youth at an earlier age. I was blessed to be able to play soccer and football and baseball and basketball and tennis and all these great sports. And now I'm looking at my sons that are 7, 9 years old, and they're kind of being led into, hey, are you a baseball player? Are you a football player? So want to share with you a little bit about Brian. He is the founder and president of Catalyst Physical Therapy and Wellness. And his journey in physical therapy really began as a high school biology teacher and a varsity soccer coach. So here's a gentleman that has a master's in physical therapy and has pursued functional physical therapy since 2006, but understands, I think at a youth perspective all the way up to a geriatric perspective, what goes on in the brain of athletes, whatever age, and really how to improve the way that we treat our bodies as athletes and improve the way that we can, I guess, improve wellness. So, Brian, absolute pleasure to have you here on the show.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. This is exciting.
And so a little bit, for me, I'd love to share with our listeners what got you into therapy. So you're understanding biology and you're helping out kids in high school. And so what changed to really take your life's path into this direction?
No, it's a great question. I wouldn't say I actually was helping the kids. That's the problem. I was a very advocate of working hard, playing hard, and being the strongest. So as a soccer coach, I was a biology teacher. That kind of happened from being a pre-med student and going down that path towards knowing I wanted to be the best at biology, wanted to be the best at chemistry. So that's kind of like going into majoring in that in undergrad. But beyond that, when I got into high school teaching, I was a soccer coach. That was just kind of, I played all through university level and just love that sport, wanted to give back to that. So this was a pretty, I wouldn't say up and coming. It was a very kind of a program that needed a lot of remodeling and shaping to help these youth athletes start to develop. Well, I came in with guns blazing, trying to get them all ready, and I said, okay, well, if they're going to be able to run further, they're going to be able to jump higher. We're going to make them strongest athletes they can be, and then we'll get the skill work built around the ball. And what I ended up doing in the first several months was honestly running them into the ground a little bit because I didn't really have great program design. So the kids got a little burnt out sometimes. They weren't getting to that full athletic talent that they had. They weren't tapping that. And so when I was able to kind of chat with a friend of mine that was in the industry, she was an occupational therapist, And I was running through this stuff going on with what's happening with these kids. And she just kind of said, well, have you ever thought about, you sound like you want to like do physical therapy with them. And then I was like, I don't even know what that is, but you know, I had never really been exposed to it. Luckily, fortunate enough, I'd been injured, but I'd been in an athletic training room, never had formal rehab, never had surgeries growing up. So I wasn't that typical path towards physical therapy. But having that medical background, she, encouraged me to look into that field. And after a year of coaching and teaching biology, I realized that medicine was not going to be really where I wanted to go in the sense of MD. So I kind of scrapped that plan and went into an open house. And next thing you know, I started meeting a lot of the great professors at this university there in Kansas City, where I'm from. And they were, kind of, next thing you know, I had one professor talking to another professor, and I was like, why are we all gathering in this room, and why are there 7 people kind of interrogating me? And ends up that was my interview. And so back then, that was kind of the situation at hand. They recruited me in school basically for that, and I started the next 2 months later. So I was able to still coach the high school level throughout my throughout physical therapy up into my 3rd year, where I started clinicals. Then I couldn't coach anymore because I had to travel, but that was it was very rewarding to step into the field and see just really dive into the material at such a more in-depth way. And I became the passion came out at that point in time, and I always knew I wanted to get into medicine, and I knew I wanted to apply my biology, kinesiology, all that. But learning the nuances of the body and learning how it really works and how we can change it can just it just really infatuated me, and I got infected with it and excited to progress into that arena and leave my message behind. So
that's a wonderful story. And Monsi, what I'm hearing here is kind of like with functional medicine, right? That there's a need to educate and train those folks that really want to perform in a certain way, right? And other options have not really been able to get the results they're looking for, and so it sounds very similar to your path, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned functional physiotherapy. So basically, it's the functional movement and how to have a life without limitations, right? That's what it is, and then performing better in the field that you want to. So there's so many different aspects of this, and that's why this is going to be really rewarding to talk about.
So, Brian, we've had sports psychologists on the show here, and for those that are just joining, you can go to hcshow.net and download our old episodes and learn more about that. But what I really wanted to maybe start off the show with is understanding your definition of movement literacy, what that means, and especially for our youth.
Yeah, well, from the standpoint of what kind of we just mentioned, this I get to be the coach, right, for life. And now it's like, as a physical therapist, I believe we're all the guides, and if we can help guide people into what avenue they're going to heal a little bit better within, knowing like a musculoskeletal change that needs to take place. So from a standpoint of, some people need, there's all different ways to skin cat, and we can obviously go about the psyche of a patient, and we can go through the medicine that they've been through. We can go through all the how they feed their bodies, all of that. Well, movement literacy is really foundationally built on just learning the ABCs of movement and learning some specific things that your body needs to do before it can advance. And I've tried to create a very foundational screen that we can put forth for everyone. So our trainers can do it, our physical therapists can do it, and our coaches can do it. And what then allows that to do, it doesn't have to mean it's a youth kid. We want to work with the youth population a lot, because that's where they can be very imprinted upon, and they're not so stubborn, right? As we get older, and we're like, no, I don't do this. That's not what I just never was that kind of I didn't move this way, and I'm not going to learn that.
That was so 2010. I'm not doing that right now. Yeah.
It's like my dad right now. I can't get the guy to stretch his calf, and then all he really needs to do is get a little bit more ankle dorsiflexion when he walks, and he wouldn't have shin pain. But it's that at a younger age, they're a little bit more moldable. A lot of times, a little less hardened, right? So movement literacy is learning those ABCs, because you wouldn't teach a kid can't write a sentence, can't formulate words if they don't know their ABCs. Well, same sort of thing with high level movement. You have to learn foundational things, such as hinging your hips, such as squatting properly, lunging properly, using your core properly. So all of those kind of like foundational screening metrics come into play. And then what we're able to do from that is give them a score. And then if they rank, kind of in a, standpoint of like once you've achieved mastery, not necessarily at the highest mastery level, but you've gotten to where you're capable, then we can move and go in advanced technique. So I'm trying to really hit home with that and make it more of, because it's kind of like where I believe gym programs should be in middle school, where I believe, gym teachers should be educated on. And I think it can really be a big thing here in the States if we start to just embrace it and understand that if we can get to these kids younger age and start finding them ways of moving better and more efficiently, then their bodies are not going to break down nearly as badly as we're going to see trends coming towards.
I think that's a great point, because I look at what our kids are doing, and they're getting PE maybe twice a week in middle school, and all they're doing is maybe a little bit of stretching, but running around a track, right? Or maybe kickball, right? So you've got all this time, and they're only doing those minimal functions, right? So it seems criminal.
And even if it doesn't, if the coach doesn't know it, that's fine. But bring a specialist in, bring somebody in as a guest speaker or whatever, and help them establish some foundational, programs that will address some of the typical deficits. It's kind of where, we went with the whole physical exercise. Remember when we used to get the tests and it was like, are you falling in the presidential award? Or are you, I never got to that because I couldn't do the pull-ups. I'm just a lankier guy on the upper body.
Yep.
I had the long arms and I couldn't get the whole body up there, but that was what I defined.
Gravity was never my friend.
I could run that mile well, but it was just not that. But yeah, it's that issue of ultimately education and getting the word out there, but then embracing this idea of being proactive and not so reactive to what's going to happen to their bodies. So thinking about the things that they're going to get themselves into, making sure that they can go through those foundational movements well, then progressing to what sport, the fun stuff that they see on TikTok and Instagram that they want to do because they say that I'm a baseball player, right, or they say I'm a football player.
And I think that we won't be able to get to all of that before the break, but I think what's interesting is, you take somebody like an Antonio Gates, right, that was primarily a basketball player, and then those skills that he learned translated perfectly into football. Exactly. And so I think this movement literacy would love to, on the other side of the break, understand, what are those core functions like you talked about that then would apply to that youth that says, you know what, I was focused on soccer, but now my passion's baseball. Now my passion's football. So stick with us here on the Healthcare Corner as we talk to Brian Wilson and Catalyst about physical therapy and wellness.
To learn more about being a guest on the show or to ask a host a question, go to hcshow.net or email the show at info@hcshow.net to get your questions answered on the Healthcare Corner. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Healthcare Corner with Gavin Wiswell and Dr. Mansi Shah. Welcome back to Healthcare Corner, where you're a part of the conversation with your host, Gavin Wiswell and Dr. Mansi Shah.
Welcome back to the Healthcare Corner, and Dr. Shah and I are here with Brian Wilson, the founder and president of Catalyst Physical Therapy and Wellness. And before the break, we talked a little bit about movement literacy with youth and some of those core concepts of what they need to be taught and the opportunity that there's in school to help them with that literacy. And so, Brian, I'd love for you to kind of expand upon that philosophy of, say, take my son that used to play soccer and love it, that then now is turned into a baseball player, or my other son that, again, soccer that's turned into baseball and football. And so what core skills are there that we can teach them early on to be able to help them develop just better overall athletic ability?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when you come down to kind of getting more granular with what the testing does and how we set up a profile for somebody, it's not only, just these 8 tests that we throw out at them as a gamut of things to just see if we can catch some anomalies that we're going to see in, like, their ankle not moving well, their hip not moving well, their thoracic spine getting tight, like poor weakness here, that kind of stuff. It does start that journey, but then for us, really, like the proof is in the pudding as we start to work with the athlete themselves and we start to see these 3-dimensional challenges put into play where we're asking them to move in the frontal transverse plane, sagittal plane, moving different directions. So forward, side to side, rotationally. And as we get into those levels of kind of assessment, these kids can then, and really anybody can learn to start to figure out where the biases the sport has taken them to. So maybe in soccer, you might have more internal rotation on your plant leg. and that allows you to strike a ball harder on the opposite leg. And then you might have a little bit more of a rotation in your thoracic spine one way versus the other. And then in baseball, we know that coming into play, and it might help them with a stance position that they get into before striking a ball with a bat, because of the lower body, all the ground reaction force that you need to generate from your lower body to create that rotational momentum for a ball to hit a bat. I'm sorry, for your bat to hit a ball, you know what I'm saying?
Of course.
For that to happen, takes place from the standpoint of just biasing into that transverse and rotational plane. So what we do is we just get a little bit more dialed into the athlete, and then we start talking about what sport, okay, in the sport, these trends are what we see with injuries. This is what typically is happening. We're getting a lot of ankle injuries. We're getting a lot of hip injuries, knee injuries. And then we know what to be looking for in that. And we know how your biases in your muscles, because that's been researched now. That's the fun part, is we can know, like a pitcher like your father, we can know like what his external rotation and internal rotation strength should be, and what his range of motion should be, or what that's being done at the elite level. And then we can take a younger athlete and help them be able to go, this is where you're not set up genetically. Right. So we need to either work on that, or we respect that and we gain it somewhere else, and we teach you how to move differently so you don't end up just throwing out your elbow or hurting your elbow or whatever else could come down the play of, injury risk.
Monse, I know you had a couple of good questions that you wanted to bring up.
Absolutely. That was such amazing information. Like, it's a whole different world we're exploring here, Master Brian. So I had a question on comorbidities and being a functional practitioner. I'm always wondering on how much emphasis other practitioners and modalities are putting on malnutrition and comorbidities, and how do you address that in your clinic?
I love it. Unfortunately, we don't have the expert, in-house that is the best person. So we need to get exchange numbers here and make sure you're ready for the influx of calls. But honestly, when it comes to the comorbidities and nutritional diet, I mean, we're big advocates of like what you put into your body is what you're going to get out of it, obviously. So being smarter about your diet decisions. We're constantly getting asked, what do you recommend, or what do you think, in a sense of like, is going to help me? A lot of it, so when it comes to the nutrition side of things, I guess you could say we're not necessarily getting a lot of, we're not recommending a bunch of stuff other than like, let's talk about, healthier things you can eat, and healthier things you can fuel yourself with. And after surgery, we can talk to them a little bit about, okay, these are what we've supplemented with before, or this is, but really it's not to the point where we're really dissecting each person's diet and putting them on a daily log and watching their calories or any of that, which I think is very valuable. And I would love to have that in my practice. I just never have actually, kind of found that person that was ready to join in that capacity. So what we work more with is we typically are talking a lot more about blood flow. So if you're talking about blood flow, that's going to be, just discussing like smoking cessation. We're talking about diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, any of those things that could delay that blood flow, because, we're kind of a blend in theory between Eastern and Western medicine. I like to say that. So that to me is more respectful of, okay, if you want to call it chi or you want to call it blood flow or whatever it is, really, if it's not moving well, or if it's going to be restricted because of some sort of comorbidity or thing that you're putting into your body, then we need to figure out how to unblock that and how to get it to move better so that the body can naturally start to heal and regain what it needs in nutrients.
Absolutely. So you're doing some of it, but not all of it. And I think these clients would really benefit from having a wholesome approach. And we definitely need to have a side conversation on exchanging numbers. So we'll do that. But that's still a great approach you're using, Master Brian, for addressing what you could. Because, you didn't go to school for nutrition. So that's kind of whatever you do, you can do the best, right? Like
yes.
From the knowledge you've gained. And that's excellent. I love that. But I think more wholesome approach is what we need to do for these kids. That way they can understand. Because, with the fast food and how we have kind of created our lifestyle, we're not eating to support these high-performing athletes that we want to create out of these kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great segue into this next question I have for you, Brian. So, I've coached my boys in multiple sports, soccer and baseball specifically, and I felt like this is finally the year that the boys wanted to play more than I wanted them to. And I think you see parents that drive, all across the country in sporting events. They're pushing these kids to where they're absolutely burnt out, right, by the time they hit high school or college, and they've worked so hard to be a first-round draft pick, but are just done with the sport. And so I think, with these decisions of, hey, I've got a trainer 3 days a week, I've got practice, I've got all these extra things. Where's the balance in all of that? I know that one of your logos is from A to Zen. So how do you find that Zen space for these athletes and parents to kind of know their space on making this a healthy, rewarding experience?
Yeah, and I mean, it's such a multifaceted question, right? It depends on the kid, obviously, and you know that as a parent, every one of them is so different. And I think what it comes down to is that it's not going to go anywhere. It's more pressure is going to keep developing, and from a standpoint of where we live, San Diego, obviously, you're in a single sport capital because you've got one season. There is no off season.
Right. Yeah. Our cousins are just starting baseball because the snow's melting.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So we just finished. Yeah.
And you have the that pressure in itself. And it's a money making, or it's an organizational thing too. So the organizations are forming more and more as people move. As people populate a new area, they want to have a sports league for that area, and they want to have that group doesn't necessarily coordinate with the other group that's over just 5 miles away. And so the calendar starts getting busier. The tournaments start getting, more exciting. Kids start getting invited to this, and I got to be at that. If I don't show up at that, I can't be anybody. I'm not in that showcase. I need to be there. And so the pressure is just getting higher and higher for them. So what it takes education to the parents. It takes education to them to recognize signs of burnout, to recognize signs of, I've just got a really motivated kid that wants to be in this sport and does not, that's them. That's who they are. And you know them, and my kids are not that way. Yeah. And yet maybe they will get there. I've got a 8-year-old, 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old, but they're not in that capacity where their brain wants to go there. And I'm trying to expose them to all different things, all things that I wanted to do and like, and then whatever they kind of seek out with me. So being respectful of that, of kind of how they're actually, who they are internally, drive, knowing that. But then when it comes to kind of like balancing, it's always going to be it's a delicate thing that you have to just address individually and go, all right, well, as a what I would say in our profession, what we can do is we can talk to the kid maybe without the parent, and we can find out from that kid if they're we can find things that a lot of times parents aren't told because we're that outsider that they feel comfortable sometimes with speaking to. Yeah. So in a workout with a kid, I've had a lot of times where they've told me things that they're just like, I just don't really want to play. I don't want to hear that. And I can see the burnout. Yeah. And then I can kind of be that advocate for them and their parent communicating, but also I can talk to the parent a little bit and some of those situations that would allow them to like get to know that type of burnout situation happening. But the trend is already happening. The kids are burning. 70% of kids are stopping sports at age 13, organized sports. Wow. 70%. That's unreal. That's so big. And I can't think of it being anything other than they're getting just exposed to one thing and just kind of like saying go, go, go.
Well, there's such a dichotomy, right, of those that play it recreationally and those that are focused to take it to the next level. So I'm seeing that with our 9-year-old, right, where you've got half the team that maybe first year, second year exposed to baseball, and you got some guy that's throwing 55, 60 miles an hour, right? Yeah. I mean, it's two different types of kids, and so they don't want that negative impact. They're not winning the games. They're not excelling because there's a small population that's just uber successful and focused on just that one sport. And these are the travel ball kids. These are the kids that are really getting the outside training and all of that going on. And so, yeah, that's probably a whole topic for another conversation that we'd have you back on. But I think that literacy, like you're talking about, is so important, right, for the parents and the kids to really have an ability to talk openly about what their goals are.
Right, and if you can put that together with if a kid is developing and wanting to play, and they're just that type of a athlete, or even as a parent, to make the sport a little bit more fun for the kid. Maybe they're not enjoying the sport because they really just don't have the coordination, and they need to develop coordination outside of the sport, which might have happened from you being a swimmer and a basketball player. So we can figure out some of those things with the movement literacy that might be a balance for them to start to train in the gym and learn a little bit of better movement techniques. Then when they go play, they feel more successful, and that feeds them into this better energy and overall, awareness of that.
That's wonderful. This, as always, Monsi, is going to be a very fast episode for us. And so on the other side of the break, I think we're going to want to start talking about really more in detail what you do at Catalyst, Brian, and some of those cash pay services that are really standing out to you. So don't go anywhere and stay with us here on the Healthcare Corner.
To learn more about being a guest on the show or to ask a host a question, go to hcshow.net or email the show at info@hcshow.net to get your questions answered on the Healthcare Corner. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Healthcare Corner with Gavin Wiswell and Dr. Mansi Shah. Welcome back to Healthcare Corner, where you're a part of the conversation with your host, Gavin Wiswell and Dr. Mansi Shah.
Welcome back to the Healthcare Corner. And Brian, you brought up a statistic that really kind of jarring that I know we just talked about over the break, but 70% of athletes really just being burnt out and done at 13 is a horrible thing. And I think about my dad that was able to play professionally in baseball, who didn't pitch until the 10th grade his first time, right? Or the Antonio Gates story, or all of these athletes. And so how do we change that mentality from burnout and done specifically to a love of exercise and wellness and finding your passion?
Yeah, I mean, healthy habits, younger ages, right? Like an understanding that this can be fun, and it doesn't. And I can't treat a patient, a youth athlete, the same way I treat a 30-year-old that is a weekend warrior wanting to go after it every weekend and just passionate about developing their body. You have to treat a young kid they're so imprintable, and you have to find the energy in the room. You have to understand their personality, and you have to figure out what is going to motivate this kid to have fun today, and how am I going to have fun playing, but also learning new things and strategies that are healthy for my body. And so that's where really, that's what the, piece to the puzzle that you have to figure out with each kid. But it is so rewarding when you start to see that fire lit. And, that's kind of what Catalyst is all about ultimately, is that spark, right? Like, what can we get to change somebody? And what can we provide to find that spark in them to move forward? And so for a youth athlete, it's ultimately just figuring it out and trying to continue to show them what they're successful with and get them built up in confidence, and continue to feed them that at the same time, kind of giving them little tasters, small, of maybe what they're not so good at. The bite-sized care model, where it's like, and you really suck at this, so we're going to do this a little bit, and I have to stretch your hips. Yeah, you got to sandwich in between all the good. Right, exactly.
Yeah, so it's funny you brought that up. So we just had our end of the year party for my 7-year-old team that I managed, and we got a baseball piñata. And these kids hit that piñata so hard. I couldn't get that kind of swing over the plate all season. Yeah. But you put a piñata in front of them.
It's over.
I should do that every practice, is what I'm hearing from you, right?
Yeah,
just bring a piñata. We'd be done. Best team in the league.
Now you know what to start it off with every year.
That's right. So Monsi, I think we want to trend to kind of, the cash pay and what stands out here, and just wondered if you had any questions along those lines that you had for Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Master Brand, how does Catalyst, serve differently compared to the other outpatient physiotherapy facilities out there? Can you explain us a little bit more in depth?
Sure. Yeah. In depth, it's for very basic level, it's kind of, we are a blend between Eastern and Western medicine. So we respect all, medicines from all over the world ultimately, and healing techniques. And so what it is that we're extremely good at is being listeners and detectives. And we love to kind of get to know someone on a very deep level to try to figure out, again, what is going to be that spark. And that's what we're especially focused on in the early phase, is trying to talk to somebody and learn their story, learn what things they've been through, learn what successes they've had. All of those things tie into just a even more focused approach on what we feel, what area, and that's what our logo is all about, kind of the different colors and the different petals that come off of it. It's really to just show all the different facets that we feel that can help somebody move forward and get better, and more in a natural way. So we try to promote all those things for them. So sometimes that's, just somebody needs a little bit more focused corrective exercise. They need the specific ones that they can do differently. that will help them get better, and they're very short on time. Some people may need a little more just kind of discussion and talking about the changes in habits they need want to form. Others will need more body work and detail-oriented body work, meaning like it's not just kind of getting a surface flow massage, but they need to get really focused, techniques performed on them to allow their hip to move better, their ankle to move better, and break it down a bit, apply stress to those areas to allow it to then start to, the body to remodel and reshape. And so those things are all kind of calculated and put into play. And then ultimately, sometimes it's just kind of having fun and bringing the right kind of energy and enjoying the conversation and helping somebody be positive in their own, healing and addressing that mental component. We're not psychologists, but we know that 40% of healing is happening from the standpoint of being positive and focused and strong in your belief that it's going to be good for you and that you're gonna follow a good plan. So we have to be motivators, we have to be coaches, encouragers, and help those people that come in to walk, that give us that opportunity to work with them. That's obviously a gift, and we want to make sure we respect that and figure out what it is truly, uniquely, individually that they're going to be able to do. When you look at most other places that are getting, in the healthcare model, more and more mills are being built, right? Where there's just like, if you don't see 15 to 20 patients a day, you are not meeting your productivity. And if you can't meet your productivity, you don't deserve this salary. And in our scoring of what we look at our employees at, it's so much more focused on how are you being a good team member? What are you doing for the educational environment around you? Are you training students? Are you teaching others around you? Are you motivating them? What do your patients rate you like? Are you a good person? Do you air out your dirty laundry all the time? Or do you, keep that in its place? And just generally, like, we're talking about behavioral patterns with our PTs and trying to figure out what niches they want to fall into. And I think that trickles down into the care that they're able to provide, obviously, because they're not being held to a high number. They're not seeing tons and tons of patients every day. We can see a mixed patient load because we've explored some of these other areas of massage therapy and personal training that are cash-based type things. And we also do cash-based PT, where people want to pay for one-on-one treatment, they can get it. And they can have a full hour of focused attention. They don't have to just get, 30 minutes and 30-minute segments.
So, I love that. So it's a wholesome approach and more of a mind-body-soul combination where you actually see someone as a whole person and help them in different aspects. So it's not a cookie cutter and very personalized, customizable packages that you create from client to client. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. That's what we're trying for, striving for.
So Brian,
striving for that.
Yeah.
So what professional organizational entities out there rely on your staff and team to create the athletes that they want to see in the future?
Well, right now we have the privilege of, we've been able to do we did one of the largest screens being done with Point Loma Nazarene's sports science department. They had their group come down and we were able to kind of team up with them along with our professionals and do a full screening of this tennis academy that's going on in Point Loma, which is a really fun thing at the Barnes Tennis Academy. That was a neat screening where we saw lots and lots of youth athletes in the middle school range of age, pretty much a little bit younger than that, some of them, and some of them a little older. But that was a fun one where we were able to help them develop the screening there. We've worked with San Diego Loyal now for the second year, which is the men's professional soccer team here. And we just got the job and we're working with San Diego Wave FC. So that one's also going on the new women's expansion team. So that's pretty exciting to see that happening. I mean, soccer's just booming here in San Diego. So we're excited to be a part of that. We've worked with we're working with a couple of youth organizations up in North County and in San Diego on the soccer side of things too, to help their clubs and organizations get a better grip on the kids and balancing it out because they are seeing this year-round injury rate increase. And so we're seeing that in the youth level now. And then we're working with USA Rugby. So we dabble a lot in different arenas, but the exciting part for us is really we can just dissect movement from athletes in different ways. And it's not that we don't have to specialize in one sport in particular because of the way that we're trained. We can really find those nuances that the highest level athletes are missing. And we can dissect that and then put it into a program for somebody and to help them, really refine those movements and get more efficient and stronger over time.
So Brian, we like to talk about the finances sometimes on the show. And so you're looking at somebody that will spend $300 a month on a on a travel team and another $200 a month for the equipment that they need. What are the costs that you're talking about to work with Catalyst? A couple hundred a month? Does it range? What would our audience need to know?
No, it depends. Obviously, we set up packages for people really based off of their kind of what financial needs they have, and then what they're, where they're comfortable. But also from a standpoint of if you really want to look at it, like, we just have to decide on some of these connections that we have where we're always established in a club, then they obviously are set to get treatment from us every week, and we come out for an hour, and it's just a calculated thing, and that's not, that's built into a fee. For a parent, it might be $100 a month that they see. But then the team and the organization is paying for all, that as a group is taking us to get our specialists out there to work with them. But if you're looking at from a standpoint of more of a one-on-one individual basis, that kind of an athlete coming in, it depends. They could go down the path of, like, a lot of times they'll need at least 12 visits to see that structural change, where we're going to get them to move differently, get their body to start to remodel and reshape. And then those things can run, $1,200, $1,500. But over 12 visits, then you look at that. The reason why that's set up is we know that the healing rate of people, if we looked at twice a week, trying to get on more of a formal schedule to create a habit change and create a body change, that's going to happen over 6 weeks. So that $1,200 invested there, does it prevent a surgery down the line? Does it prevent a, and that's the secret ultimately in our profession, getting better and being more proactive, and not,
because you're seeing so many more surgeries happen sooner, right? I mean, right. And proactively, I know with baseball, the Tommy John surgery, like, people will do it before they need to, because then they come back stronger. Right. Sometimes. So am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. I mean, once the body has been broken down and the mechanical stress has taken you over that point, that area of your body is always more prone to injury, unfortunately. Right. That's not to say that you can't be that anomaly that comes out of surgery stronger than you ever have been, because it turned on a light in you that changed the way you trained and the habits, and all of a sudden you become this beast.
Sure.
That can happen too. It's just that the typical, once the body has broken, it's hard to come back from that. So it's that when that final straw happens, and say it's a tear of a ligament, it's a tear of a tendon, that body doesn't restructure and remodel back to its same old self. So when we're seeing it happen at a younger age, that's how much more important it is for us to imprint on these kids not to let that happen, and to pay attention to any aches and pains they have, or to be seen by a specialist. I mean, in my thought, it should be, well, we'll pay a dentist to go see a dentist twice a year, because the Dental Association said that's important for teeth health. Yeah. Well, why won't we see a physical therapist twice a year? Because it's important for physical health. Like, to me, we can do a physical screen on somebody and help them learn their body in a ways that no physical I'm not to say that a physical and a medical professional is not necessary, but the physical from a standpoint of what we look at is movement and movement medicine. Right. That kind of a thing can be so imprintable and so valuable for somebody not to fall into those bad habits that could lead them to tear.
Excellent point. And so stick with us to the very end. And on the other side of the break, when we talk about 3 things that you and your kids can do to improve their exercise and mobility, and stay with us here on the Healthcare Corner as we continue with Brian Wilson and Catalyst.
To learn more about being a guest on the show, or to ask a host a question, go to hcshow.net or email the show at info@hcshow.net to get your questions answered on the Healthcare Corner. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Healthcare Corner with Gavin Wiswell and Dr. Mansi Shah. Welcome back to Healthcare Corner, where you're a part of the conversation with your host, Gavin Wiswell and Dr. Mansi Shah.
Brian, it's been absolutely wonderful to get to know you here on the show and to learn about all the things that Catalyst is doing and will be doing. So for our listeners that are just finding out, how can they get a hold of you? How can they learn more to improve their lives or their children's lives? So how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, our website is probably the quickest, easiest place to go and visit and learn a little bit about our story and kind of the ways that we have set up. I've set some guides up on there that they can visit and start to go down a path if they have a specific area of their body. I've worked and run for most different areas of the body. So they could learn a little bit about our philosophy behind treatment through those guides. They can reach out there, catalystptandwellness.com. And then that's P as in Paul, T as in Tom.
And we'll link to that on HC show as well.
But as far as the kind of other ways. You can email me, anybody at the info line. We have that on the website as well. We all have our emails up there, and then phone number, same way. But the quickest and easiest way is to go check us out there, and then put a little inquiry in there, and you can fill out some forms on how to make it the conversation specific to you. And we'll give you 15, 20 minutes of just talking, and we'll get sorted out like what would be best and maybe a plan, or whether it's just kind of getting to know an answer, one thing you want to know. We're happy to do that for free and just get you on the phone.
And I can tell you from a personal experience that I had the opportunity to work with one of Brian's therapists, and it was that personal experience. I did get a tailored plan for me to be able to be stretching better each day and work on some of those areas of pain that I have as a middle 40s individual. So it is the real deal, and I definitely encourage you to check them out at Catalyst Physical Health and Wellness, and that will also be at hcshow.net. So Monsi, I think you've got a great question for Brian.
Absolutely. So Master Brian, in the segment 4, we always have our guest speaker talk about 3 things that our audience can implement right away. And I would love for you to elaborate on that and, quick tips. So let's go for that.
All right. Well, let's see. I think, the first thing we have to think about is what are we doing in our day every day that's kind of hardening our bodies and making it, hard for us to do the things that we want to do in life. So if it's a desk job, if it's and you're in that environment where you're sitting a lot, your body's going to get good at doing what it does the most. And so it's going to be really good at sitting and not complaining. But then the second you stand up and you try to walk around, the second you try to get out and shoot that basketball or run or hike or ride a bike, any of that, it's not going to feel nearly as capable. And so the first thing that I would ultimately say is learn that habit, that one thing that's going to get you up moving more in your day, whether it's setting an alarm, making sure you don't sit and grind out emails for 2 hours at a time, but take like that 5-minute walk to go get a drink of coffee or water or juice or whatever you need for that hydration. But it's making sure that you don't fall into that pattern of just kind of redundancy that can harden up your body in a way that it's not conducive to you moving and being more able of the things that you want to do in life. So that would be the first thing I would say. The second thing, I have to be an advocate for getting a thorough evaluation done of your body. I think that it's so important to just learn where you are in a roadmap for yourself. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be with us. It can be with other physical therapists if they have those kinds of programs. But the ultimate goal is just to understand how you can change your movement patterns to get better at your weak spots and develop those areas. And then, really feed off of the strengths that you do have going on for yourself and talk to somebody that can understand on maybe it's, okay, let us figure out, well, maybe you do need a little bit of body work here and there to help you feel better because this old injury is coming back to bite you. And it happens when you've sat for 3 hours or you've done these things. So it's not letting yourself become too reactive to the problem ultimately down the line, but it's being more of an advocate every year and being on an annual basis of because your body changes and your habits change every year, believe it or not. And unfortunately, the 40s do hit. And the 30s were kind of fun, but the 20s were the best, right? And then you kind of learn, everything starts deteriorating really in those mid 20s. And you start to lose those cushions in your back, the spine, the cushions, and then you find out those discs get bad. And next thing you know, you're aching about your back pain because you picked up your kid and you had to hold them, or your mom recovering from holding your kids, and nobody ever talked to you about physical therapy. So it's getting to see a specialist that can actually help you learn better habits on where you're weak, where you're strong, and also flexibility. Obviously, it's so important as you age to make sure you're harnessing that and getting better at moving more regularly. And addressing those deficits there. And then I think the last thing that I would go would probably be the route of, the third thing would be, if you are finding yourself in a period of where you've worked out and played and done a lot, and just kind of, and you're finding yourself not recovering well, that there is an art to recovery as well. So meaning if it could be stress recovery, it could be meditation that you need to get into a little bit more. It could be the fact that you do go out and you play really hard on the weekends, and then the next Monday comes along and you never did actually mobilize your body afterwards or put any bit of compression on or hydrate well or refuel. And next thing you know, you're kind of slowly building up worse and worse habits that will allow your body to break down over time. So it's developing a better recovery routine, maybe falling out of the old path of I don't warm up at all. I just jump out of my car and I go running or hiking, and I don't put any mobility into the routine beforehand, and I do have ankle pain and I do get shin splints or I do get toe pain or whatever it is. There's ways to kind of uncover that, but a lot of that starts with, good recovery habits and taking care of your body regularly.
Those are great points, Brian. And the one thing that one of your therapists shared with me was that you don't want to work out every day, but you can stretch every day. Mm-hmm. And so that mobility, I think, is key, especially as I get older and I'm not in my mid-20s anymore, obviously.
Yeah. I always say you can stretch every day and you can use that core every day, and then you can abuse that. It can recover quick. But if you don't know how to use it and it's been sleepy for a long time, then it's going to be hard for you.
So we've got a couple of minutes left, and so much of what we do with Forterre and our partners there is the telehealth component. And there's only so much that can be done with telehealth. It's great for data analysis. It's great for grabbing information. And I know that there are new codes out there for therapists called remote therapeutic monitoring codes that were just released this year. But from a telehealth perspective, what are some of the pluses and minuses you've seen, just as an overview in your space?
Yeah, I mean, we pivoted to telehealth very fast when COVID hit. Within a month, we set up a telehealth program going forward, and it opened the door for our therapists to start to expand that. We had a lot of aches and pains developing that, right? But it was a forced adaptation, and we're going to evolve, and we're going to make this business grow, and we're going to continue to move every year and get better. So that was a really rough start. But what we found were it stretched the therapist's ways of describing things to patients and getting better at being able to guide movement through verbal cueing versus tactile, being able to get your hands on somebody and make them move and manipulating the tissue. Yeah. And so we're a very hands-on clinic. I didn't talk about that as much as in our difference, but we get our hands on everybody, and we're working with their joints, and we're making them move certain ways when we get the opportunity to. When we don't have that opportunity, telehealth does still allow us to still make some change with others. And it gets people, you kind of start to dial in on I think you start to dial more in on a few things and not getting too big with the program, because if you start to lose time when you try to describe 6 different exercises in an appointment, and that can get really hard to do when you're not in person. In telehealth, you can go through maybe 3 to 4 things, but you get more focused, and maybe you go through it with them. It holds them accountable. They're still coming to you. They're still requiring that. They like that one-on-one ability to still interact with a person, so that community can still be established, which is awesome, because that's what we're also about, is developing community. And we want our place to be vibrant. We want it to be full of life, and we hate separation and setting into you're in this little pod over here and you're over here, And so telehealth still has that. You'll never replace the physical component of a person. I don't think that's replaceable. I don't care what they do with AI and what happens down the line. That physical touch and being able to assess things, there's a skill built in physical therapy and in a lot of healing medicines that you know what it feels like to find a tissue guarded. You know what it feels like to find a tissue. You know when the end point of a muscle stretch really comes into play. And you're constantly assessing with people and developing that skill over time. So I think that component can't be replaced. The other thing, though, financially, ultimately, when you look at the business, telehealth, you still have to have a person on the other end. It's not a robot. So they still can only see, those two people.
Amount of people, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And then they don't get reimbursed as much as you would for an in-person visit. But it is here to stay. And I love it. And I love the access it provides. It provides people that if somebody, on the East Coast wants to see us and learn from us, they can get an appointment with us, and we can set it up. And that access point is really, really valuable.
Supports collaboration, and I think in a rural setting, for those that weren't able to get to high-level programs, now have an opportunity to be exposed to other ways of thinking and better programming.
You bet. And you can catch a lot through a camera, believe it or not, and just because that's what we are. You also dial yourself into movement and watching and assessing movement and asking people how they're feeling, and all of that ties into this big global plan that you can play out there with. But having that access to be able to still catch that is really good, because then you can get them moving in the right direction off the bat.
Diagnostics are key, but I totally agree with you. I think Dr. Shaw does as well, that you can't take the human out of healthcare, right? In any way, shape, or form, right? And the diagnostics are there, and they're great, and the AI is great, but that should only empower that provider to have better information and then understand those key points, like you're saying, as they're manipulating and improving the care of that individual.
Yeah. I mean, maybe
Absolutely.
definitely. Like, great to have somebody delivering some baseline exercise to get somebody doing the right things that might be more hands off, right? And then if that isn't working and you need more of a really, organized and eclectic way of looking at it, then you can go and get that person in-person work.
So Monsi, my biggest single takeaway is that, like a dentist, I think physical therapy should have those two, just check-ins, a semi-annual check-in on your physical wellness. I think, Brian, that's an incredibly great point that you bring up, and something that we should advocate for. What was your biggest takeaway, Monsi?
My biggest takeaway, honestly, personally, I love that Catalyst treats patients and clients as a whole person, and not just looking at the physical fact of how the movement is, but they're looking at the different things as, some counseling that they're giving on like mental health, or helping them understand how can they eat better, what are healthy foods, like stuff like that. I think we need more of that, and just absolutely love this concept.
Brian, it's been really illuminating for us here on the show, and really to understand and recap what we've learned today, just about movement literacy and the importance of understanding the core and different exercises for youth. Also understanding that just for a little bit of money up front, we'll save a lot of money on the back end. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Just understanding that really these clients of yours and kids in general don't need to be so focused on a single sport, and that being able to have that assessment will allow them to really engage in a more happy and healthy life. So thank you for being a part of the Healthcare Corner, and we thank everybody for listening as always, and we hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks for having me.
To learn more about being a guest on the show, or to ask a host a question, go to hcshow.net or email the show at info@hcshow.net to get your questions answered on the Healthcare Corner with Gavin Wiswell and Dr. Monsi Shah.